Hey guys, and welcome to The Intelligence Economy. My name is Saanvi Sharma, and I'm really glad you're here, even if you just stumbled across this by accident. So, over the next few weeks, I'm going to be talking about something that I find genuinely fascinating, which is the relationship between AI and economics. Things like how AI is changing labour markets, what it could mean for inequality, how entire economies might shift because of it. Basically, the kind of topics that keep me down a rabbit hole at 2 a.m. when I should probably be sleeping. Anyways, a little bit about me. I'm a second-year economics and management student at the University of Southampton, so I am very much still learning. I'm not here to act like I have all the answers, because I really don't. I just love talking about this stuff, and I figured, why not share it? And look, I know some of you might be thinking, why should I listen to some random second-year student talk about AI and economics? Which is fair enough, honestly. But I think the most interesting conversations come from people who are curious and still figuring things out, rather than the people who have already made up their minds. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Whether you're into economics, interested in AI, or just want something a little bit different to listen to, I hope there's something here for you. Our first proper episode is going to be looking at whether the rise of AI will actually lead to more inequality. It's a big topic, and there's no clean answer, which is exactly why I want to dig into it. But for now, thank you so much for giving this a listen. I really hope you stick around. Let's get into it. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Intelligence Economy. I'm Saanvi Sharma, and if you haven't listened to the intro episode yet, go back and give that a listen first. But if you're jumping straight in, that's totally fine too. So, today I want to ask a question I've been thinking about. Will the rise of AI actually lead to more inequality? It's not the most important question we could be asking about AI and economics, but it's one I haven't really seen discussed much, and there's a lot wrapped up in it. Whether AI actually affects inequality at all, whether it hits certain parts of the economy more than others. Honestly, I'm not even sure what the answer is, but that's exactly why I want to dig into it. But before I get into any of the economics, can we just take a moment to talk about how fast this industry is actually moving? Because I think it's really easy to underestimate, and it matters a lot for everything we're about to discuss. So, take Anthropic, the company behind Claude, one of the leading AI tools right now. In the last year alone, they've released around 8 or 9 different models, each more capable than the last. That's basically a new, more powerful model or version of the same tool every single month. And Anthropic is just one company. We've got OpenAI, Google, Meta, they're all doing the same thing. The reason this matters is that when economists or policymakers talk about the potential effects of AI on jobs, on inequality, on society, there's often this assumption that we have time to figure it out, that these big transformative changes are years or decades away. But when you look at the pace of development right now, that assumption becomes really hard to believe. What feels like a distant future might actually be a few years away at most. And here's something that makes it even more mind-bending. One of the most celebrated AI scientists in the world, Yann LeCun, a Turing Award winner who spent over a decade leading AI research at Meta, he left in the late 2025 to start his own company, AMI Labs, with over $1 billion in backing, built around a completely different idea of how AI should work. Rather than training models on text, his approach works by teaching AI to understand how the physical world actually works, rather than just predicting the next word in a sentence. He's essentially arguing that the AI we have today, impressive as it is, might not even be the right path to a truly intelligent system. And that's kind of a staggering thought, and actually something a friend of mine brought to my attention, who you might hear from in later episodes. We're already seeing AI reshape economies and labour markets, and we might not even be using the right approach yet. If we're genuinely only at the beginning of figuring this out, then the pace of change we're about to see could make everything from the last few years look like a warm-up. Before we get into it, I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what inequality actually means. Because it's not just one thing. Economists generally talk about 3 main types. So we have income inequality, which is the gap between what people earn. Think the difference between a CEO's salary and a minimum wage worker's. Then we have wealth inequality, which goes a bit deeper than that, looking at what people actually own, so property, investment, savings as well. You can have 2 people on the same salary, but with a completely different level of wealth. And then there's opportunity inequality, which is arguably the most important one because it's about access to education, access to healthcare, networks, and increasingly now technology. It's not just about where you are now, it's about what doors are open to you in the future. Economists will already be familiar with these, but if you're tuning in from a more of an interest in AI than economics, then that's a quick breakdown of what each actually means. So, why do economists actually care so much about inequality? It might seem obvious, but at its core, it comes down to fairness, but also self-interest. Because highly unequal societies tend to have lower social mobility, weaker economic performance, and higher rates of poverty. So it's not just a moral issue, it's an economic one too. Now, something I've been thinking about that I don't hear talked about enough, and I think it really connects directly to the last point about opportunity inequality. Most major AI tools, so ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, they cost around £16 to £20 a month for proper access. On the surface, that doesn't sound like much, but think about who that actually excludes. If you're already in relative poverty, £16 to £20 a month isn't a small thing. It could be a significant chunk of your disposable income, or simply not possible at all. Meanwhile, wealthier individuals can not only afford the subscriptions easily, they can buy higher usage tiers, access more powerful models, and use AI to actually educate themselves and grow businesses and then generate even more income. AI becomes a productivity multiplier, but only for the people who can actually already afford it. The rich get the tools make them richer, and the gap widens further. And this is where it connects back to opportunity inequality specifically. It's not about who earns more right now. It's about who gets the tools to earn more in the future. If access to AI becomes as fundamental to the career progression as access to the internet is today, then locking it behind a paywall could entrench existing inequalities in a really serious way. Now, for today's episode, I want to ground this discussion in something concrete. So I've picked 3 countries to compare: the UK, Brazil, and Finland. I chose the UK because it's where I live, so it felt like the natural starting point. And then I've picked Brazil because out of the group of countries consistently ranked amongst the world's most unequal, so places like South Africa, Namibia, Colombia, Brazil, sitting at a GNI coefficient of around 52, has by far the most developed AI ecosystem. And then Finland, with a GNI of around 27, is one of the most equal countries in the world and also leads that group on AI development. It's ranked 4th globally for AI readiness. Then the UK sits at around 32 on the GNI scale, so comfortably between the two that I've just discussed. So comparing these 3 felt like the most meaningful way to actually look at whether AI and inequality have any relationship. Just to quickly explain the GNI scale for anyone unfamiliar, it runs from 0 to 100, where 0 represents perfect equality and 100 represents total inequality. So the higher the number, the more unequal the country. Let's start with the UK, since it's my home. The UK is genuinely one of the most advanced AI economies in the world. It has over 2,300 AI companies collectively valued at over $230 billion. It's home to Google DeepMind, and in 2025, the government launched a £2 billion AI Opportunity Action Plan with ambitions to make Britain a global AI superpower. Investment is accelerating too. A fifth of all AI-related inward investment into the UK since 2019 happened in 2024 alone. So by any measures, AI has been growing rapidly here. But here's what's interesting. Over roughly the same period that AI has been taking off, the UK's GNI coefficient has actually gone down slightly, from around 34.7 in 2015 to about 32.9 in 2024. So the UK has been getting more equal, not less, during the rise of AI. Now I want to be careful here. You can't just look at those 2 numbers and say AI caused the improvement, because a lot of other things affect inequality, from government policy to the cost of living crisis. But it's worth noting that AI doom story, where AI automatically makes inequality worse, doesn't seem to be playing out in a straightforward way here in the UK. On the regulation side, the UK has taken a very pro-innovation approach, basically letting AI develop without too much interference from now. There's no proper law specifically on AI yet, just a bill slowly making its way through Parliament. Now, let's look at Finland. Finland gives us a kind of best case scenario for what AI development can look like in an already equal society. It has an LUMI supercomputer, one of the most powerful in the world. It's home to a thriving AI research ecosystem, and its AI company, Silo AI, was acquired by AMD for $665 million, a huge moment for Finnish tech. Generative AI is estimated to potentially add 13 billion euros to Finland's GDP by 2045. Finland has been building its AI capabilities deliberately and strategically for years. And what's happened to inequality there? Finland's GNI has remained remarkably stable, hovering around 27, staying at one of the lowest in the world. AI development hasn't pushed inequality up, and I think there's a reason for that, and it's quite important. Finland has a strong welfare state, progressive taxation, and has actively invested in digital education and AI literacy for the general population, not just the tech sector. It isn't just building AI, it's thinking about who benefits from it. In terms of regulation, Finland as a part of the EU falls under the EU AI Act, the world's first comprehensive legal framework for AI, which came into force in 2024. It takes a risk-based approach, meaning the rules get stricter depending on how high risk the application is. Certain uses of AI are banned outright, and for high-risk applications, there are strict requirements around transparency and human oversight. Companies that don't comply face penalties of up to 35 million euros or 7% of their global annual turnover. Finland has been supportive of this framework and sees it as a way to develop AI responsibly. And then we have Brazil, which tells a very different story, but maybe not in the way you'd expect. Brazil is the AI powerhouse of Latin America. Microsoft invested $2.7 billion in AI infrastructure in 2024. The government launched a $4 billion national AI plan. Around 9 million Brazilian companies are now using AI. It's moving fast. But Brazil's inequality, while still amongst the highest in the world, at the GNI of 52, has actually been slowly decreasing, down from around 53 a few years ago. So, even in a country with massive structural inequality, AI growth hasn't made things dramatically worse. At least not yet. The key word there is yet, because Brazil still has enormous challenges. A huge proportion of the population doesn't have reliable internet access, let alone access to AI tools. The digital divide there isn't about who can afford a subscription. It's about who has a device, who has connectivity, who has the education to use these tools in the first place. Think about that subscription cost point I made earlier. In Brazil, that barrier is even more fundamental than just £16 to £20 a month. Compare that to Finland, where digital education is a national priority, and the infrastructure there is for everyone. Same technology, completely different story depending on the society around it. On the regulation front, Brazil's Senate approved an AI bill at the end of 2024, but it's still working its way through the House of Representatives, with no confirmed timeline. Right now, AI in Brazil is governed by a patchwork of existing laws, data protection, consumer rights, civil code, rather than anything designed specifically for AI. For a country with Brazil's existing levels of inequality and a rapidly growing AI sector, that absence of clear framework is a real concern, actually. Now, before we draw any conclusions, I want to take a step back and ask something important. What even is AI, and how does it work? Because if you don't have at least the basic understanding of that, it's hard to understand why regulating it is so difficult. The AI tools we've been talking about, so we've got ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, are all what we call large language models, or LLMs. The basic idea is actually simpler than it sounds. These models are trained on absolutely enormous amounts of text from the internet, using books, articles, websites, conversations, and they learn to predict what word or phrase should come next in the sequence. That's basically it at the most basic level. But when you scale that up to billions of data points and billions of parameters, basically the internal settings the model adjusts as it learns, something remarkable happens. The model starts to appear to reason, to write, code, and even argue. Not because anyone programmed it to do those things specifically, but because it learned the patterns in the human language well enough to replicate them. And here's the thing that makes it genuinely fascinating and genuinely worrying from a regulatory standpoint. Even the people who built these models don't fully understand how they work. There's a term for this, the black box problem. You can see what goes in, you can see what comes out, but the billions of calculations happening in between, nobody can fully trace them. And this situation is only getting more circular. Anthropic has reported that around 90% of Claude code, their own coding tool, is now written by Claude itself. So we're already at a point where AI is building AI. And if the creators can't fully explain how the original model works, what hope does a regulator have of keeping up? If a system makes a mistake or shows bias, the black box nature means we can't trace the thought process and see why it made the decision. And that has real consequences for things like hiring, loan approvals, even criminal justice, where AI is increasingly being used. If you can't explain why a decision was made, how do you hold anyone accountable? So, but wait, does any of this even matter if AI is so heavily regulated? That's a really interesting question, and my honest answer is not enough. Not yet. The EU AI Act is genuinely ambitious, but the black box problem means that even with the best regulation in the world, it's incredibly hard to enforce. If you can't fully understand how a model makes its decision, how do you audit it? How do you prove it's concentrating benefits at the top? You can write the rules, but enforcing them is a different matter entirely. And for countries like Brazil that don't even have that framework, or the UK, which is deliberately going slow, the space for AI to widen inequality without any meaningful check on it is even larger. So, what does all of this actually tell us about whether AI causes inequality? Honestly, it's complicated, and I think that's the most important thing to say. The countries with the most advanced AI ecosystems, the UK and Finland, have not seen their inequality worsen. If anything, it's gone slightly the other way. But I don't think that means AI is fine and we have nothing to worry about. What it tells us is that the impact of AI on inequality depends almost entirely on the decisions governments and societies make alongside it, about welfare, education, access, and redistribution. Finland's stability isn't an accident, it's the result of deliberate policy choices. Brazil's vulnerability isn't inevitable either, but without those same choices, the risk is real. But here's where it gets really interesting. And I'll be honest, I've been going back and forth on this one myself. There's an argument, bear with me, that not having access to AI could actually be a blessing in disguise for some younger people. A study from MIT's Media Lab found that students who exclusively used AI to help write essays showed weaker brain connectivity, lower memory retention, and a fading sense of ownership over their own work. And a study of 666 participants here in the UK found a significant negative correlation between AI tool usage and critical thinking scores, with younger users being the most affected. There's even a term for it now, cognitive offloading. Basically, outsourcing your thinking to AI so your brain gets less of a workout as a result. So you could argue that kids growing up without access to AI are actually being forced to think for themselves, to problem solve and independently then build stronger cognitive skills. Whilst wealthier kids with access to every single AI tool might actually be undermining their own development without even realizing it. But this is a big but. I don't think it's that simple, because clearly there are people using AI in completely opposite ways. Not to think for themselves, but as a learning tool, asking it to explain difficult concepts, challenge their ideas, explore topics they'd never even had access to otherwise. As one researcher put it, it really comes down to whether you're using AI as a crutch or as a tool for growth. So the question isn't just about who has access to AI, it's about how they're using it. And that comes down to education, which again takes us straight back to inequality and straight back to the difference between somewhere like Finland, which is actively preparing its population to use AI well, and then somewhere like Brazil, where those resources simply aren't available. Okay, guys, so let's come back to the main question. Does AI actually affect inequality? Based on everything we've talked about today and looking at our three countries, my honest opinion is that right now, AI isn't having any major or dramatic effect on income inequality or wealth inequality. Finland is probably the best example of that. One of the most equal countries in the world and one of the most AI advanced, and its GNI has stayed remarkably stable. Even if income and wealth inequality aren't being dramatically affected right now, I do think AI is already having a significant effect on opportunity inequality. And that's the one that worries me the most for the future. We talked about the subscription costs and the digital divide, and who has access to these tools and who doesn't. This matters because research actually backs up what might seem obvious, that when opportunity inequality rises, income and wealth inequality tend to follow. The IMF has found that in societies where opportunities are unequal. Increases in income inequality tend to become entrenched over time. So if AI is already widening the opportunity gap, the income and wealth effects might just be a matter of time. The world still has a lot of catching up to do before AI is the main driving factor of economic change. But based on the pace this industry is moving at, that moment could come sooner than any of us expect. And when it does, the countries that have invested in making sure everyone can actually access and use AI, like Finland, will be in a very different position to those that haven't. So for now, not crisis, but the foundations are being laid for one. And speaking of AI reshaping the economy, next episode I want to tackle something that I think is one of the most fundamental questions in economics, and I want to see how AI fits into it. Every economist will know the concept of scarcity, the idea that resources are limited, and that's what drives economic decisions. But what happens when AI enters that picture? Will scarcity actually limit how far AI can develop? And could AI ever do something that economics has never managed? Actually solve scarcity? That's next time on the Intelligence Economy. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast and hope to see you guys soon. Bye bye.